Hello everyone, welcome to the Fedora Linux installation video. This is intended to be an installation guide to Fedora Linux. This is going to be the Gnome version, the basic version of Fedora. If you go to their website and you hit download, this will be the version that you will find. In another series a little later, I'm going to get into the version for KDE. That's the one I personally use, which is considered a spin on Fedora's site. It takes a little bit of an extra step to get through to that, and I consider the desktop to be a little bit more advanced, a little more for advanced users. So I figure, why not start with Gnome, which might be an easier one for a lot of people to get into, especially if, for the purposes of this tutorial, will be your first time messing with a computer, first time learning Linux, etc. I'm planning on doing a few episodes dedicated to the order of utilizing various parts of the computer, including browsers, application management, which is installation updating, using file management, going through some shortcuts and tips and tricks for computers and stuff like that. But I would rather teach it on Linux, because if someone wants to start getting into computers, maybe they're trying to learn something, maybe you're a college student trying to get into this for the first time, Fedora would be a great step to start off with Linux. A lot of stuff's already done for you. A lot of things are difficult to break because it has a few protections put in, but not too many, so it's not really limiting compared to some other ones like Ubuntu. So there are a lot of opportunities to get started utilizing Fedora Workstation first. So we're going to start off with this. This assumes that you already have an installation media, like a thumb drive or a CD, which I don't know anyone using CDs nowadays, but if that's what you'd rather, go for it. On the Fedora site, there will be either ISO files that you can figure out how to put on a thumb drive yourself, or you can use their image writer, which is downloadable on their site and works on Linux if you already have it. I doubt that if you're watching this video, or will be available for Windows if you're already on Windows. If you're on Mac, I'm not exactly sure about that one because I personally don't have any Mac devices. So if you're on a Mac, I would suggest going and finding a tutorial somewhere that would help get you to this point. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through installing Fedora in this video specifically, and in the next one we're going to go through some extreme basics to getting your system set up, which includes hooking up to Wi-Fi, getting some basic applications installed, updated, making sure your stuff is logged in, getting you some basics for how to manage your system, how to get it powered on, powered off, log in, log out, and just extreme basics like that. And then we're going to slowly kind of move through a short tutorial of operating the system itself. So look forward to that. And then once we're done with Gnome, we're going to move on to KDE in the future, which will have a few more additions of applications to it, a little bit more customization available. But hopefully if you go from this version to KDE later, a lot of things will begin to make sense, but a lot of the steps and the explanation will be very similar. So let's get started here. Once you boot into your live USB environment, this is what you'll find. If you don't know what I mean by live USB, I'll explain it in a minute when you actually see it. Basically what this is doing is it's loading a very small operating system off of that thumb drive that's allowing you to use Fedora for a short period of time to install Fedora on your computer. It's kind of this crossing system, but it'll make sense in a second here. When you first load into it, you'll get this menu, and we're not going to click through this immediately. I'm going to explain what a couple of things are here. Ignore troubleshooting. You don't really need to know that right now. If you don't know what it means, then you don't need to know what it means probably. Personally, I've never actually used it myself. This is for more advanced stuff that even I'd care to do. You'll see start and test. Those are the two that we're going to look at. For most people, probably yourself included and myself included, we're going to test the media first. You should always do this when installing something that you intend to, when downloading something that you intend to install later, especially if it's coming from a source that you may or may not be able to trust. In the case of Fedora, while you can trust them, you can get security issues where somewhere in the middle of the download, it's incredibly rare, but somewhere in the middle of the download, someone could inject something that could potentially corrupt your system or could cause issues or could even be malicious in some cases. So what I would suggest doing is running a test this media and then start. I've already tested it, so I'm going to go through with start. But if you're following this, just hit test and then start, and it'll take you to the step I'm about to get to. I would suggest pausing the video and getting to that point. You use up and down arrow keys on your keyboard to access the menu, and you press enter to push the one you want. Okay, welcome. So this is what you should see after you've tested your media and after you've hit start. This is the basics to, this is the introduction to the Fedora desktop. You should see something along the lines of this, where you'll see welcome to Fedora with an install and not now button. What we're gonna do for right now is we're gonna hit not now, because I want you to explore just a little bit and kind of see if this is the right move for you to jump with Fedora Gnome. And I'm going to explain a little bit more what I mean by Gnome. If you play around with this a little bit and you start kind of seeing things or something feels a little off, then you might want to look into something more Windows-like, as I'm going to call it, which I would point you towards KDE, which I'm going to do a tutorial for later. You might enjoy that version of the desktop a little bit better, but for now, we're just going to look at Welcome to Fedora. So we're going to click Not Now on this window, and we're going to see the simple desktop. Okay, I've just adjusted my desktop a little bit. I'm going to explain really quick before I start getting into the installation. I am in fact using a virtual machine for this system because I don't want to do this on my primary system, which I'm recording on. Recording, that's a little complicated. If you don't know what a virtual machine is, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to know what it is right now. I might get into it a little later, 6 episodes into this or something if I feel it necessary, but for the most part, you don't really need to know what it is. Basically, I'm running a computer within a computer. That should be enough for you to need to know. It allows me to simulate what I'm doing here from the comfort of my own system. What you should see right in front of you here, we should both be seeing the same thing, will be the opening desktop of Fedora Linux, where there's nothing really going on. First off, I think what we should do before doing installation is connect it to the network. The easiest way to do that would be clicking on this top right, where you'll see the power icon, volume icon, and I have this little icon, which I'll explain in a minute, is because I'm using a virtual machine, I have a wired connection. You're probably going to see a Wi-Fi logo here, a Wi-Fi icon here, which you're probably already familiar with if you use a phone or a laptop already. That is what you'll see. If you click on this little arrow, which is a side button, I'll explain a little more later when I get more into the operating systemness of it, you'll see a short list of your nearby access points, your nearby networks around you. I would recommend selecting the one that you expect, the one that is your home or your public network or whatever you might be using. Type in your password, log into that, and that should put you on your Wi-Fi network. If you're using a wired connection, great, you're probably already done. Now that you're connected to the network, you're free to play around with it a little bit. If you kind of want to poke around, you're probably not going to break anything, but that's up to you. And again, if you don't feel this layout is proper for you, I would suggest jumping over to the KDE tutorial or to a KDE tutorial somewhere. But if you feel this is fine, or if you want to give it a chance and play around with it a bit, then we're just going to jump right down here to install to hard drive. If you click on this top left button up here, you'll see this area is called the dock, or called the dashboard, where you'll see a search bar. You can search things if you're familiar with Windows or even your phone. You can open up your apps tray and you can search for apps. You have workspaces here, which we'll get into a little later, and you have a little dock down at the bottom where you'll see some commonly used apps, including this install to hard drive. This application will only show up on this live USB. If we select that, just left click it, it'll open a separate window which fills the entire screen. You cannot move or close this. If you're familiar with computers already, you can click quit, but what we're going to do here is just select your language. This is pretty straightforward. Hit continue on the bottom right. This is the really important menu. Most of this stuff is probably already done based on if you're already on Wi-Fi, which we just connected, then it'll find your things like your time and date. It already selected our language as well due to the region, so our keyboard selected. The only real button we have to worry about here is this installation destination button. This is where it's going to install to. So if we select on that, we'll see a new menu, which shows our drive. If you are in a system that has more than one drive, I would suggest learning which drive you actually want to install to. What this is going to do when we select the drive, you can select only one. If you have 3 drives here, 2 drives, whatever, the one with the check mark here, see if I click it, the check mark goes away. If I click it again, the check mark comes back. The one with the check mark is the one it's going to install to. And what that's going to do is it's going to completely wipe that drive. Everything on it will be gone, so note that. And it does say here, disk if unselected here will not be touched. So if you have several disks, don't be concerned about unplugging them or backing anything up. Just make sure that you only select the disk that you specifically want. If you only have the one, then great. And maybe it was a Windows system, maybe you just bought a laptop or a gaming computer or something, you have one drive, you just want to wipe it and install to it, that's perfectly fine, go for it. This is what we're going to do here. It's network disk, you really don't need to know what that is right now. That's more of a system administrator thing. Storage configuration, this is so you can do things like customizing your partitions, which we're not going to get into in this tutorial anytime soon. Basically, that is trying to separate out different sections on disks. It's possible, something I've done personally in the past is I have separated out disks using a thing called partitions. Think of it kind of like a folder structure. So I can set one partition to a Windows install and another one to my Linux install, and I can have 2 operating systems on one drive. A little bit more complex. We're not getting into that in this. Again, this is a not just Linux for beginners, but just computing for beginners using a very easy to learn Linux distro. We can encrypt your data. You're welcome to feel free to use that. What that's going to do is it's going to ask you for a password during installation, and it will encrypt your drive and make it unreadable by any other system but this one, unless you know your password. If you're concerned, maybe you have a laptop and you go out on mobile a lot and you're concerned about it being stolen and anything on that drive would be read, you can encrypt it with a custom password. Just note, you have to obviously remember that password. It will not help you, will not store it. You should write it down somewhere, or it should be a password that you know really well, because if you forget it, all the data on your computer is basically forfeit. You will not be able to access any of that. Even a repair shop probably will not be able to access that data. There will be no recovering that data because it will be encrypted with a custom key, whatever key you give it. Feel free to click that if you want. I'm not going to do it for the cases of this video. When I click done in the top left, it will ask if I want to wipe that drive because I have something on it. I did a previous video with this disk before. What it's going to do is ask if I want to reclaim space or if I just want to add more disks. I'm going to reclaim space, which is basically just going to wipe the drive. That's a fancy way of saying wipe it. In this case, I have something on the drive. You might actually have something very similar. So you can go through and click on each one of these individually and click delete. Delete over here individually. What I would recommend if you're planning on wiping the entire thing and you just want to restart, just click on the top bit, hit delete all, and hit reclaim space. What this will do is it'll wipe the entire drive just as I stated, and everything will be completely gone, and it'll install Fedora on that drive. Once you hit finish, and then it goes back to this menu, all you have to do is hit begin installation. It will begin this little progress bar here, where it'll go through the drives. It'll figure out where things are going. It will be copying information over from your thumb drive or your CD or whatever you happen to use to the new drive. It'll be using the internet to update while it goes, so you have a nice updated system when you get into it. If you don't connect the internet, which is perfectly fine, you don't even have to actually connect the internet to do any of this. If that's a concern of yours, maybe you don't have internet, that's perfectly valid. You don't actually need it. It just means it won't be fully updated. And again, if you're not using internet controlled stuff, that really doesn't matter. I'll be back when this is finished. Welcome back. So if we look here now, we can see that our installation is now complete. The bar is full. We have a nice little finish installation button at the bottom right, and it will say Fedora is now successfully installed and ready to use. Go ahead and reboot your system to start using it. You click finish installation first. That window will close. We're back to this little desktop that we'll kind of get into a little more in the next episode. Go up to the top right where you see this power icon. If you click on that, then we'll see the other power icon. Click on that as well. You'll see the different power settings. What we're going to do is we're going to click on power off, and we're going to click power off for the confirmation. When this powers off, pull out the thumb drive. You don't need that anymore, and then reboot your system. I'll see you in a little bit because I'm going to power off and reboot my system, and then I'll see you when we're fully loaded back into the desktop. Awesome, welcome back. So now we can see here that we have booted into our system, and we have a nice little pop-up, a nice little window that's showed up here. The desktop looks very similar to what we just had in the live boot environment, but now we have a welcome to Fedora Linux. Great. Let's go through the little startup that it'll provide here. It'll have us type in things like our name and set up our login and ask us for some privacy things. If you want to turn these off, feel free to. It won't really affect your experience much other than maybe location services. This is the kind of thing of when you're going on a shopping app or you're trying to look at Walmart, Target, you're ordering pizza or something, it's going to want to ask for your location. That's what's going to do that. So that's really the only thing that could kind of affect your experience. But if you want that off, feel free. That's up to you. I'm going to leave it on for the cases of this. When you hit next on the little menu, this will take us to the next page, and we'll see, do we want to enable third-party repositories? I highly recommend this because this will make future installations of various applications and programs a little easier. I'll get more into what third-party repositories and repositories in general are a little later when we're talking about installing applications, but for now we're just going to enable this. You can always disable it later, but there's not really any real concerns. The only reason they're asking is because it includes proprietary software, as you can see here, and some people who use Linux are kind of against proprietary software, so that's the real reason why they're asking. We're just going to enable that for the cases of this because if you're a beginner, you probably don't know or care what proprietary versus open source software is. We're going to hit next again. You can connect one of your online accounts. The beauty of these, your Google, Nextcloud, or Microsoft account will contain things like your email, your calendar, your contacts, etc. And this will automatically import a lot of that in. If you're still a beginner and you're learning how some of this stuff works, it might be useful for you to log into one of these. I usually do it after the fact, but this is perfectly up to you. If you're comfortable doing it, go on ahead. All it's going to do is ask you for your simple login. It's just going to open a browser. You might have to reconnect to the network up here, just like we did in the previous one. You can actually do that without closing this. Again, just open this menu in the top right, click on the little drop down arrow and reconnect. It might already be connected from your live boot, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So just check out for that. If that's not connected, these won't work. So go on ahead and connect to an online account if you're comfortable and want to do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to skip on forward and you can join me there. Next is asking for my name. I'm just gonna put my name in here. This is asking for your username and your full name. You can make your username really anything you want. It also gives a nice little drop down here with some suggestions that might fit well with what your name is. I'm just going to use dbowling. That's what I typically use. You can also change your profile icon, but there's nothing really in here. I don't think. Oh, there are a few options, I guess, by default. I never really use these. I usually grab one. Here's some headphones. How about that? We'll use some headphones because I like my audio setup. So you can set a nice little profile icon. You can also change this information later, so feel free. We're gonna hit next again. We're gonna type in our password. And you can use the little eye icon here to show what your password is. I'm not going to because I actually use one of my real passwords for this. Oops. It's fine. Go on ahead and make your password whatever you want. Make sure it's nice and strong. If you used an encryption, if you encrypted your drive in the beginning, I would suggest not using the same password because it could cause issues, because it's the kind of thing of if someone figures out your encryption password but not your user password here, then it'd be still much more difficult for them to get into the system. Again, if you're using encryption, an encrypted drive, you probably care about someone getting into your system. So, but if you didn't, then whatever. This is up to you. And honestly, if it's a home desktop, it might not matter anyway. Go on and hit next. Oh, and we're done. Let's start using Fedora. Great. I think it's going to give us a little welcome tour for Gnome. Yep, there we go. Welcome to Gnome 45. It's going to take you for a little tour. You're welcome to go through it if you want. I'm going to skip it because I'm going to go through a lot of the stuff it's going to bring up anyway in the next episode. But for now, we have a working Gnome Linux desktop, and I will see you in the next episode when we go through and look at how some things such as opening and using applications, moving things around, learning some window management, learning how your power works, settings, etc. But for now, you should have a working system. If you want between episodes, feel free to go on ahead and just start looking through some applications, learning some stuff, logging in. You're not really going to break anything, so just go on ahead and have some fun. I will see you in the next episode.